Hello, and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror, movies, and awesomeness. This week, we have a look at the horror film Frankenstein Unbound. This is episode 438. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can find at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
Murder? What is murder?
And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Okay. Frankenstein Unbound is a 1990 science fiction horror film based on Brian Aldiss's 1973 novel of the same name. It stars John Hurt, Raul Julia, Bridget Fonda, Jason Patric, and Nick Brimble. The film is co-written and directed by Roger Corman. This was Corman's first directing effort in 15 years, and it was the final movie that he directed until his death. So between 1990 and 2024, this is the last directed, at least credited, directed film by Roger Corman. He did it, and he directed for a fee of $1 million. So let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Tony, Julia, Drew, and then I'll go. Drew, I believe you recommended this film, so when we get to your opening thoughts, you can explain to us pourquoi. Tony, lay it on us. Opening thoughts. Frankenstein Unbound.
This is a strange movie. I mean, it's interesting, and that's something else. I don't think I had seen this all the way through. I was surprised. I thought I had. It's got a really striking cover, and I remember that, and I remember bits of it, but somehow I don't think I ever watched it all the way from beginning to end. It's interesting. It's got a really stellar cast and a lot of good makeup effects. There's something that to me felt like, and I don't mean this as a knock, just a flavor. There's something about, I think the stock that's used, kind of the sets, the idea of this like future car that's in it. It feels like very Full Moon entertainment, and it's like just the way it is. And I love a lot of Full Moon stuff. I don't know. It just fits that niche of, you could just as easily put Julian Sands in it.
Yes.
Like,
absolutely, yeah.
And
like
not that I
style?
want that, but like it just has that flavor, and I kept kind of coming back to that. And again, that's not a knock. It just is one of these like, that's interesting. I'd forgotten that it's like a time travel epic as well. But it's got a really the cast is really awesome. It's trying to do stuff with the Frankenstein mythos that we haven't seen before, so that's always kind of cool, like how you play with that. It's I don't think it's my favorite Frankenstein movie, but I think the audacity to go, you know what, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna have these sci-fi elements. We're gonna up the effects. The creature effects feel like I feel bad. I should have looked it up, but they're kind of on par with what we've seen in like Nightbreed, which I think was cool. I think it's a fun movie. It's a good one to discuss as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Julia, what are your thoughts?
I had mixed feelings about it. I'm looking, by the way, at it says makeup department, but I don't see who the makeup artist Juliana DeCarli, special makeup effects artist Nick Dudman. Does that sound like anybody? Susie Evans. I don't know. I'm just looking at who the makeup department was. I thought the first kind of half was really good and moved quickly, and then the second half just seemed to really drag to me, and got just weirder and weirder. So I thought it was definitely interesting. Like there was a lot of it was very it felt timeless. Like it felt the Julian Sands, may he rest in peace, thing is accurate, because it feels like a movie that could have just been done in the 70s or the 60s or whenever, because it takes place both in the future and the past, and there's never really anything grounding you in the time. The car is wicked cool. It's a real car.
Yeah.
and Jason was like, I wonder what it's based off of. So I looked it up, and it was a 1988 Ital design Aztec. There's nothing, they didn't change it. That's how it looked.
That's just the car.
There's just like a few made. Anyway. But and the performances are great, acting is great. So yeah, so I thought there was a lot of good stuff, but I didn't love the second half.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Drew, what about you?
I agree with Tony that this is a very weird movie, which is one of the reasons why, since we are going through and looking at all of the so we're taking snippets of the filmography of Roger Corman, and I think you see a lot of the different hats of Roger Corman in this movie. Like you on one level, I feel like I don't quite agree that this is. I understand why, because it's shot in Europe on like practical, locations and things like that. But I think this is a much classier movie than Full Moon could have pulled off. Like if Full Moon had made it, I think it would have been a lot more exploitative. Than, which isn't a knock, because I also like Full Moon, but
I agree with you, Drew. I don't mean to interrupt, but like my thing is the flavor of how it looks and kind of how some of the set pieces are. Like I agree with you totally, but I'm not thinking of it. I don't know. It's hard to express.
Well, I think I'm wondering if you're talking about the sort of over in Europe in like actual castles and
not just that, but that's the actual how it looks, like the film stock,
like the film grade,
all of like the lighting, etc. feels in like it could easily fit. But I agree with I know exactly what you're talking about, and didn't mean to interrupt your thoughts, but that's when you're talking about it, that's more of what the flavor of it,
The other thing that I will say is I do sort of agree with Julia that it even though it's a very interesting movie to me, I do agree that it kind of falls apart at the very end. I get what they were trying to do, but it doesn't quite come together for me. That being said, there is a lot that I really like about this movie. I of course like the cast, particularly I love Raul Julia as a very sociopathic Dr. Frankenstein. I think he is wonderful, and I love his line deliveries, and I'm sure we'll get more into it. And I also really like that this incarnation of the monster, they seem to really be trying to do the sort of brooding Byronic monster from the novel. Like I like that they were going back to that. And the makeup design is at times a little over the top, but also very striking. I think it in some ways is an homage to the Thomas Edison Frankenstein, but also like some of the little details, like the fact that he has two sets of thumbs, or the fact like the contacts where he has multiple sets of eyes that have been sewn together. Like all of that stuff is super memorable. So I think this is an interesting Roger Corman film, and I also think it's an interesting Frankenstein movie. It's also based off of a book, and I have, it's not much like the book, but it is interesting, and I'm sure we'll, if anybody else has read it, I'm sure we might get.
I mean, I haven't. I read it like 40 years ago, so I can't. I don't. Well, probably not 40, but I read it while I was in college, and I read it.
He always tries to age us for some reason.
And then I discovered that there was a movie based on it, and I rushed right out and I got this movie. And I remember not being overly pleased with the movie after reading the book, but
I like Dracula Unbound a little better.
Do you really?
Yeah, but I like this movie.
The reason I didn't dig Dracula Unbound as much as Frankenstein Unbound, Brian Aldiss wrote it in this amazing, weird first person that sounded, it was just a really cool character first person thing that sounded very sort of old fashioned. It was wild. It was a really neat way of storytelling. And then Dracula Unbound was just to my ear, it was this much more like just straightforward third person past tense.
I
regular
guess
book.
my thing about Dracula Unbound is that it ties into personal interests of me, Dracula and dinosaurs. So we're marking off the personal fetishes right there. So
Sure. No, I'm with
I'm
you.
a simple creature, Jason.
No, I didn't actually read it. I mean, I started it and I was like, third person, and then I tossed it aside and I never got back to it. Like any day now, but that's like a long time ago.
Well, I think it's out of print now, so you might be out of luck. But I think both books are out of print.
Oh no.
But maybe I'm
Oh
wrong.
no, Frankenstein Unbound, you can get it on Kindle.
Okay. There you go.
And in fact, you
Who
can get
needs
Dracula
print?
Unbound on Kindle. The Brian Aldiss estate is hard at work.
Who needs print when you have Kindle?
Well, I mean, you can get a print version as well, but I'm just saying
I was just kidding.
that the Brian Aldiss, the point is you can have it tonight on your phone and you can be reading it in bed, so waste no time. Okay. I apologize. I started talking to you during your opening thoughts.
I was done essentially. My opening thoughts were a tad long-winded anyway.
I just want to pick up on something that Tony said, and then we'll get into, I think, the film. So if you had asked me, like in recent years, hey, what did you think of Frankenstein Unbound? The only thing I would remember about it, well, I mean, I didn't know the plot because I read the book, but the only thing I'd remember is, oh yeah, but it was super violent. Like and now looking at it, what I see is a movie that is way less tacky, way less broad. It's very sort of genteel, it's almost like Gothic, the film Gothic. And yet occasionally there's this super graphic violence that's just thrown in. But what strikes me about it is it has this look of a 90s horror film. Like if you look at like the remakes of Mask of the Red Death and all that stuff around that time. And at the time, I didn't really like it because I was like, oh, I like the 60s look, but I don't like the 90s look. Now that we're so far away from the 90s, I'm like, oh, the 90s looks interesting too, because it also looks like something.
Well, it also feels like it too. There's the part of the feel of it is also the conceit of the time traveling car and all of that it's hard I don't know why it's so hard for me to describe it, but there's something about the way it's portrayed. Hey, I've got this cool car, and I'm gonna woo Mary Shelley with my cool car.
Yeah, in your 50s, by the way. The War Doctor is going to make out with Bridget Fonda, which I do find.
That is like another thing about this is like watching it now, and maybe it is just the presence of John Hurt, but it feels very much like it could be a Frankenstein themed episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah,
right. But there's a way that the story kind of plays out that just all of it feels like of a time.
Yeah.
It's like this mix, like it's hard to describe the flavor. Like there's you turn this off and immediately catch silk stockings on cable. Like
yes.
or UHF. That's the kind of I don't know how to exactly describe it, but there's this, it all kind of just fits together.
I just want to ask, are
you were there? You were there.
Because after I watched this, I watched an episode of Silk Stockings.
See, there you go. That's hilarious, actually.
Yeah,
there's something about the just everything that is that time period is just all there.
But the thing is, when you're in the middle of this is what's weird, is when you're in the middle of a period, you don't notice that there's anything unusual about your fashion or your way of storytelling or anything. But 15 or 20 years later, you can see it. And then it becomes exciting to me,
Well, I certainly didn't think of it when I was watching the parts that I saw, it was just like, oh, here's the thing. But as my mind parses what is going on around this time, it has that flavor.
You know what's
And
funny about that is that it's so hard. Like if you were to say, "Hey, uh, Hammer is making new movies, and one of these movies we're going to try and make it look like a classic Hammer movie." The work you would have to do, and unfortunately only some of the audience would even give a shit. They might even reject it. But the work you would have to do to like match the way that it would be lit and the way that, the film grade, which you could either imitate or maybe reproduce. But either way, you'd have to like create this look. You'd go to all this trouble. And I'm not sure that it would pay off. I mean, I'm not sure that people would actually care one way or the other.
I mean, people have tried, like Sky Captain did the whole thing where they tried
You know who did it good? I mean, yes, Sky
recreate the
Captain was
look of
cool.
old Pulp art.
Down with Love, actually, they did a really good job of reproducing the look of like a Doris Day, Rock Hudson movie, with Technicolor and the flat even lighting, so that everything is lit like it, and it came out looking gorgeously. But but then also the problem is every element has to be right. The script has to be good. Everything has to be great. Okay. Anyway, back to Frankenstein Unbound. The concept here is that this is Brian Aldiss comes to Roger Corman says, I don't know what to do, but here's an interesting book. Let's adapt this book. And the conceit of the book is, what if Frankenstein was a thing that really happened, so that a time traveler could go back and both experience the events of the book Frankenstein, but also meet Mary Shelley, the writer of Frankenstein, which is that's a really cool concept. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that nobody had ever done that before, really. This is coming from a time when actually there were a number of films that were all attempting to retell the story about, Mary Shelley, because I don't know which one, Gothic was one, and Haunted Summer was one, and there was one called Rowing with the Wind with Hugh Grant. So that's 3 films already in the 80s that had done this story, and now here was yet another one that was going to give us Mary Shelley and Byron and all those guys. So that was really cool.
Only one of them had a member of NXS in it.
No, that was really cool. You're right. You've got I apologize. Hutchins, right? Was the
Michael Hutchinson.
Yeah. Michael Hutchins, who of NXS. It was really cool to see him there. So let's talk about the main performances. First of all, the main character is John Hurt, and John Hurt is a brilliant scientist working on Defense Department stuff in the far-flung future. And he is working on basically matter displacement, and his experiments have created unfortunate side effects, such as rifts in the time-space continuum. And so one evening...
It always sucks when you have a rift in the space-time continuum.
Yes. And
I think that this part of things could have been simplified a little bit to where if it was simply weaponized time travel. I feel like what the weapon is kind of feels a little vague. Like, you get that his motivation is that he wants to be able to destroy enemy soldiers without destroying everything else around them, but
who cares?
I don't know.
It's not even about that, right?
Yeah. It becomes about time travel. Like, they're trying to draw the parallel that he, as the creator of time travel, is like Dr. Frankenstein because he's created something that he can't control. And I just think that all would have worked better if he had just been trying to create time travel from the
get-go. Thank you for explaining that. I'm not even being sarcastic. I really appreciate you saying the whole point is that he's like Dr. Frankenstein because he's created something beyond his control. Yeah, that's the best summation of this. Yeah, that was pretty good. Yes. So anyway, and he's John Hurt, and John Hurt is always wonderful to watch. I mean, he's got that voice. I had forgotten that John Hurt was ever younger. Like, it's cool to see him here in his 50s, and so it was great to see him here. Anyway, he plunges himself and his really sweet Italian concept car back to the Regency period in Switzerland, where he quickly meets Mary Shelley and Dr. Frankenstein both.
My favorite,
want to
one
talk
of my
about?
favorite bits
Yeah, please.
in this movie is the reaction of John Hurt when when Raul Julia as Victor Frankenstein says, "Oh, pleased to meet you. I'm Victor Frankenstein." And the way he plays it with his facial expressions perfectly encapsulates the weirdness of what that situation would be like.
Right.
You know,
Right.
here is this person that you think of as the archetypical mad scientist and that you think of as a fictional character.
Yes.
And here they are. And he plays it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be like, oh, I'm going to go back to the 60s. I'm going to see him making James Bond movies. And then you meet James Bond. Like, that would be weird. It would be truly strange.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, my thought would be, so you're based, so it's based, the character's based on a real person. Fascinating. And they'd be like,
Right.
what?
Right. I love that conversation too. It's really great when he meets Frankenstein, and Frankenstein immediately is very, is impressed with John Hurt and likes his cool watch, his digital watch, which he thinks is awesome, and like all of that is just
Well,
so
I love
fun.
how everything is just, it's kind of like whenever you had like I'm sorry. Well, I guess I'm not sorry. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, whenever they bring any of the geniuses into the present, they're like they super get on board. Everybody gets on board. They're just like, okay, yeah. And that's how it kind of be. It's like, oh, so you're a scientist. Cool. Yeah. Oh, so this is like your horse, like your carriage, but modern. I mean, they're just like super, just
Yes.
everything is just, they get it. It's like it was Da Vinci or Jules Verne or somebody. It's like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, it is so fun because you're right. Because all of these people are geniuses, right? Mary Shelley is famously a teenage genius, and so yeah, okay. So you got a cool silver.
She practices free love.
Yes. Both Julia and I were like, I don't know. I mean, so the age difference between Bridget Fonda and John Hurt
I
is
was grossed out.
it's actually a mere 24 years. So I don't know.
A mere 24
not a mere.
years.
It's not a mere 24 years. It's a lot of 24 years.
But what I find
Two and a
interesting
half,
about
two
the
and a
movie,
half, like no, 2 and 5. Yeah, so that's a lot.
well, what
but
I find interesting about the movie, though, go ahead, Drew, first, and then I'll go ahead.
But she is from the 19th century, so she might be used to the idea that she's going to have to hook up with an old man. So, not that I'm excusing it, but
I don't know. She has those other two hotties that they're all apparently hooking up with each other.
you
Although they
know,
might just be
yeah.
gay. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
they practice free love. So
they practice free love. They're libertines, bohemians.
Yeah.
Okay, Tony, take it away.
But I thought it was interesting that all of a sudden it does turn into almost kind of bodice ripper type of film where he's instantly like, oh man, Mary Shelley, hell yeah, I gotta see if I can hook up with that. Like there's a whole section that also kind of gets dropped by that just kind of falls off eventually. But there's
really
a whole
point.
Hey baby, let's ride in my cool future car that can print out things and analyze.
Yeah, you got
Oh my gosh! No, we have to talk about that. That is so funny. That everything else, because this is what 1989ish, 1990. Everything else about the car is spot on to now, and it's supposed to be 2030 or something. That makes not that we're all driving around those Italian cars, but the fact that you have a computer in your car that you can talk to. I mean, we have that now. That's the self-driving. We have that now. But the fact that they're like, and it prints out books on paper while you're driving. That is so great. That you would that they think that that's still something that we're going to want to do.
I can tell you that's from the future because my stupid printers almost never connect. Eventually, they always lose Wi-Fi or they're out of ink or whatever. So, he's actually created something far more futuristic that his printer always works.
Yeah.
True, but the idea that you need to have a book on paper instead of an actual,
I agree, but in just knowing my constant fighting with with that
I feel
technology.
you.
Yes.
But yeah, that whole thing, like, oh, well, print this out. Check this out.
That was
Like
so funny. Well,
all
and
of
the fact
that.
that he let her look at it, he really doesn't have any conflict about messing up the
Oh,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
driving around in a car
yeah, all over,
in
not just
19th
like
century Geneva where they just
Yes.
hung a woman for being a witch.
around
Yes.
everybody, like, yeah.
Oh my God, you're right.
But he doesn't mind the
You're
idea that
totally right.
he's gonna mess up
Yeah, he
the
doesn't.
future.
He's hoping to get Back to the Future and that it's fine. Or it's like, man, you're really maybe you shouldn't have. You should really not have done this whole time machine thing there, guy.
No.
Like he's like, yeah, I mean,
Time
well,
travel's risky.
obviously he's really okay with it once he's trying to get Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
like,
what
I
if
was a little bit more reserved. I didn't tell Frankenstein who I was or anything like that. But wait a second.
yeah, what if he
Okay,
like knocked her up and then now his own great grandfather was himself.
yeah, he doesn't care. Like he's it's on at that point. So yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So those are wonderful performances. I should say Bridget Fonda, she's just playing the beautiful and in this case very intelligent, ingenue of the character. Now, the monster. This is a really interesting performance of the monster. The actor's name is Nick Brimble, and he's got to play a lot because he's got to play. The monster has a certain amount of confusion, of ignorance and innocence, but he also, is super violent, and I just thought it was very interesting. Now, Drew, you're super into the Frankenstein monster. So, what are your thoughts on this presentation of the creature?
I think it's very in line with the book. Like he's not
You're talking about
childlike.
Mary Shelley's book, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's not childlike the way the Karloff monster is, but he doesn't quite get how things like a lot of the thing with this monster is he keeps going around and he's like, did Victor make you? Did Victor make
Yeah.
did Victor make
Or who made you? No, who made
Isn't
you?
that
who made
sad?
you?
I
He
mean,
doesn't
or
he
touching is the right word, I suppose. Yeah.
but at the same time, he's very, again, in contrast to, the Karloff monster, who is sort of, accidentally violent a lot. Like this monster is very intentionally violent. Like there's a point where Victor's fiance Elizabeth is like, oh, Victor will be cross if you hurt me. And he says, yes, I know. And he proceeds to like break her spine, her not spine, her rib cage.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
ripped her apart basically.
Yeah, and so while there is something very sad and pathetic and pitiable about him, all of the violence in the movie, all of the extreme violence that you're talking about comes from him. He's very threatening. Like to the point that by the end of the movie, he's literally trying to club John Hurt with his own severed arm.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I will say that the point at which he kills Elizabeth is when the plot starts falling apart to me, because he had said, if you don't make me a mate, like he tells him, if you don't make me a mate, I'm going to kill Elizabeth. And so then he kills Elizabeth, and Frankenstein's like, okay, I'll make you a mate now out of Elizabeth. I'm like, that makes no sense. There's like nothing about that makes
Although, isn't
any
that what
sense.
It feels rather rushed, doesn't it?
It's
like
just dumb. I just found it annoying. And
well,
totally
I think it would have been fine if they had developed, like, I mean, obviously Victor's he's just trying to make use of the monster as muscle. Like he doesn't intend to give him Elizabeth. Like that never crosses really his mind. I think I think that relationship, probably they should have spent a little bit longer developing it, so you perhaps understood the motivations. Although I will say this, to Raul Julia's credit, he plays it, even though I feel like the script kind of loses itself a little bit here. Raul Julia keeps this. There's a point after the monster has killed Elizabeth and he looks over at her and you can tell he's completely cracked, but he's going like a normal person has no chance against my creature. I've made significant improvements. And the way he delivers it is so convincingly insane.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's really conveyed on the page. He is, to me, taking those lines and really making a whole character there. So I feel like if they had just taken a little bit more time, you could have had something that worked. It just doesn't. It does, because they're trying kind of rushing to the end.
Yes.
You lose some nuances.
Not that it
there.
matters, but this is a lot of stuff that's real close to Frankenstein, the book. I mean, it's a little mixed up. Like, in the book, the monster says, "Make me a mate, or I'll kill your family." Victor says, "Fine," makes the mate. Then he goes, No, I don't like this," and he destroys the mate. The monster gets mad, and then he strangles Elizabeth. In that order,
Right.
it actually works kind of as a dramatic plot to go the other way around, where he murders.
Well,
Elizabeth
what's funny
first,
is the Kenneth Branagh Frankenstein a few years later copies this.
Really?
Yeah,
I don't even remember that
because
film. I know it exists.
he makes the bride out of Elizabeth.
No kidding.
And it's an intriguing notion, and it almost feels very obvious, but like it
makes sense.
I think this might be the first time that anybody did that in this film.
Well, that would follow, in a sense, Matheson created the reincarnation plot to kind of tie the plot of Dracula together, and that first showed up in the television film with Jack Palance, and then that sort of instantly gels in everybody's mind and go, oh, that makes sense. That's good. And everybody started using that.
And I guess to Drew's point about it being rushed, what felt weird to me is that it feels. I agree that he says that he can't live without Elizabeth, so he's going to bring her back, whatever. But he never makes any real effort to get rid of the monster, and he doesn't make any effort
really
to protect or to protect Elizabeth from the monster. Like, it just kind of seems like he kind of goes, okay, now I'm gonna make an Elizabeth, and then if the monster takes her or whatever, then so be it. He does. There's no like separating them. There's no trying to kill him. There's no nothing. And so it feels like, to me, he made Elizabeth for the monster, even though we're to understand that he didn't. I get why the monster thinks that he did.
I would like to turn to the listener in case anybody knows Frankenstein better than I do, because I have a question that I did not have time to dig into. But the way I remember it in Frankenstein, the monster in the original version of the book, when the monster kills William the kid, because remember, Justine in this movie is going to be hanged because she's been accused of murdering Victor's little brother, William, and they know that she's not strong enough, so they think she's a witch, right? And the reason that they think she did it is because there's a locket that was stolen from William and placed on Justine. And I remember it this way, that in the 1818 original version of the book, the monster, thinking very clearly, goes, I shall frame Justine by putting this locket on her. And then in the 1831, when she rewrote it, Mary Shelley got a little bit older, rewrote it, and changed a lot of little elements of the book, that she tapped the brakes on that, and the monster doesn't as actively frame Justine. It's more of just a sort of a bunch of errors. But tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe he frames her in both versions. I just can't remember. Weirdly, they don't really explain any of that stuff in the book. It's just like Justine's being blamed for the murder the monster did, and that's where we are. But I would really love it if somebody could write into the page and say, Jason, you have misremembered Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, both versions, and here's why, please. Okay.
I don't know if our listeners were expecting English homework.
Yeah. It's one of those books, just like The Hobbit, where the author, like, at one point just clawed it back and made a bunch of changes to it and then put it back out again. And so, yeah. But
we still have people doing that kind of thing today. George Lucas did
yes,
all
we
that
do,
with Star
right?
Wars.
Yeah, everybody acts like this is something new, but no, people have always said, no, it's mine, and I'm gonna screw with it now.
I want to say that there was I remember reading it where he planted it as well though.
I'm trying to, I even kind of have a vague memory of seeing it drawn in the what do they used to call them? The illustrated classics or something, where they were comics, like comic book versions of famous books that you would get at the library, and Dracula, Frankenstein, and everything. Boy, I've got to dig some of those up.
So I will agree with Julia as well that the kind of the rushed part of it is because we also get like you said, we aren't totally clear. The monster definitely doesn't thinks like, oh yeah, thanks for creating this beautiful creature for me, even though she has similar. This is just how Frankenstein monsters look, with the kind of stretched face, and the electrodes are kind of these weird bits. But I still don't quite get the motivation for shooting her. That Victor just, well, it's time to shoot you.
Yep.
And I remember I was
When
reading.
he's trying to shoot the monster, and Elizabeth jumps in front of the bullet.
Oh,
Yeah,
right. That's
it just
right.
felt like all of that just, I don't know. It feels very compacted.
Yeah.
And then we also get the
Oh, it's
future
super
city
cluttered.
and the future, all of that is interesting stuff. Because then you almost get kind of like, in some ways, like a Vampire Hunter D future, right?
Yeah,
With these
Tony,
cities and stuff
explain
like
that
that.
to
And
us.
it's just like, that's cool. I almost like, and it feels like they almost want to set it up for a sequel as well.
Yeah.
And that's, I wouldn't want to second guess the screenwriters or everybody putting it together, but we have all this back and forth future stuff, and yet we still retread a lot of kind of the original Frankenstein bits, or the romantic pursuit, which just kind of falls off. So
I
that's
was
not even as
completely
big a thing.
confused as to why this ending is here, because I don't like. I guess it's exciting because it's way more science fiction, but
Well, it's
I
also supposed to mirror the end of the book, because
Oh,
suddenly
absolutely.
they're in
Sure.
this icy,
yes,
in
but
a
it's high
weird
tech.
way,
Yeah.
even though in a weird way, this is one of the more literate Frankenstein movies, because it
Yes,
does pay
sure.
a lot of lip service to
Well-
the novel. But
Well, you also get, I mean, even the beginning is supposed to mirror that trek into the snow, right?
Yeah.
Except all of a sudden you're in a movie where he's quoting Einstein. You're like, wait, Dr. Frankenstein wouldn't know that. What are we doing? Right. So that immediately kind of puts you in this like, oh, we're in sci-fi land. And it takes you back to that as a bookend that's also, pretty cleverly mirroring the end of the book. But we spent so much time in the past.
Yes.
That the future stuff happens like relatively quickly. And it's interesting because we go down this well that's like a new lab, like, oh, this is the future lab.
Yes.
Cool. And that's how our monster meets
it's
terrible
his
future is
old
the end.
lab.
Right.
Oh,
right.
is that
It's
it?
his
It's
old
his
lab,
old lab, but in the
but
far
it's
future.
also the power source of the city.
Right. And then, but it's this weird, like almost frustrating part, because he has to execute the creature, and then the creature goes, haha, I've won. And now we're kind of led to believe that he's the AI running the city that's close by. Like he's
Right.
unbound now. He's in the Matrix. Like he is the Matrix of this future city now, which all of that's like cool and fascinating.
Yeah.
But it happens so fast relative to the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And ends, and it feels like we needed a sequel, or this would have made an interesting miniseries that would have also been good. That I wouldn't go so far as to say it squanders it, but it is like, whoa, now we're kind of dealing with some really out of the box Frankenstein stuff. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it made me kind of almost wish that we had more of that. In a way, maybe it wouldn't have been as interesting. Maybe what we create in our heads might be more interesting than what would have happened. Because they kind of want to leave you with, whoa, what's going to happen now?
I think it's fair to say that the ending is very hurried and very cluttered. Like like even the fact that it, like the reveal of it being his old lab, like it took me watching this movie multiple times to fully understand that.
I did not understand.
I think that's the why he's able to control like the laser grid.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that it says, "Well, welcome back, Dr. Buchanan," and
of course.
Yeah, and
it doesn't
got it.
It doesn't quite come together.
I got it, but it was, but then again, he also now, because it's like his lab, but future version, he kind of fumbles around with it. Like it almost gets there. But I wonder if we would have had a little bit more time here, like maybe some of the middle part, we truncate to get us into the future, because, and also, it is a little like, even though we, at the beginning, we set it all up like, hey, computer car, let me know if I can do this with the lasers, like all that all of a sudden is like, no, you can do that with the lasers, cool.
Yeah.
Like and we know we're going to get back to that, because it sets it up at the beginning, hey, let me tell you about what's going on, and I'm out here tromping around in the snow. It's interesting, and you want to find out what happens, but I think if of anything, of why it may not have gotten as good a ratings, like when you see reviews, is part of that kind of pacing and how that all works together, which is a shame, because Frankenstein's monster becomes the future.
You're right.
AI of a city is like, whoa, that's like, he becomes even larger. He can almost, if you want to take it even further, he could become like the Transformers has these big mega cities that are also transformed. Like, what if, like, he's part of this bigger thing, the Matrix of the future. He's now.
Well, it sort of reminds me,
which is great, which was also the Prometheus part, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead, Drew.
Well, it sort of reminds me a bit of the Mechagodzilla city from the Godzilla anime from a few years ago. Like, it's frustrating, because like I like everything leading up to this, and it just doesn't quite fly for me.
Right.
Like I wish that it came together a little bit better. Like it just because there is a lot to like here leading up to that. Like it really interesting. It's just like I said, it is like, as far as Frankenstein movies go, I don't really think there's another one quite like this, and like the blending in of like time travel and then like actual historical figures, and it just is a
you're exactly
take
right
on it, and
that's
I really
right.
appreciate it. But and again, I do also think it's a Corman film. It also shows Corman as a director of actors off quite a bit, because I think like these are very high quality thespians that he's working with in this movie, and of them.
No, I agree. It's amazing when you think of like just how literate this film is compared with anything that it really had to do. These are big swings, because it is quite literate. We're spending half of our time in what amounts to almost a masterpiece theater-ish kind of setting, and then sometimes it has these really big wild swings. So I guess in a sense, even though if we were laying around throwing a baseball around going, how do we end this movie? Maybe we don't do it this way in the future city, but that was a big swing. And so I kind of get.
That's what makes it interesting, though.
Yeah.
Like, not that the rest isn't interesting, but I think this is part of why we've talked about it several times, why we see Corman the way we do.
Yeah.
It's because, budget aside, whatever you think of, if something schlocky or not, like, I think a lot of his movies, you can find that kernel, like, whoa, okay, that's cool. Like, there's something to latch onto, and that's why it's not just it's just this made to get it out there kind of thing. Because there is, no matter what, in all the movies I can think of that I enjoy, like there's something in there, regardless, whether it's an action set piece, whether it's characters that work really well together, some kind of practical effects that are great, like for the time, or ideas, it's very, you're going to get the work done, but also like that doesn't mean that there's not something really there to latch onto. So there's a lot of interesting things. Whether or not they gel all the time is a totally different thing, but that
Yeah.
you know, if your worst problem is that's not too bad, you know.
Yeah. No, I
But
agree.
Yeah,
the
it
worst
definitely
is to
has.
not be memorable. And I
Yeah.
don't, and this is definitely like has a lot of memorable bits and a lot of like, oh, you know what? That was a really cool idea.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's very creative. It's there, like I say, it's timeless. It doesn't feel grounded in any one time. And so yeah, it's funny because I said that the second part drags, but we also said it's rushed, and it's just something about how it's executed. But I don't think they're terrible ideas. I just think something about how it was executed just didn't the story didn't come across
Yeah.
perfectly. But there's some great stuff like that. The earlier in the film, we just I think Jason, you might have mentioned just briefly that that they hang a witch, they hang somebody for being a witch,
Yeah.
and that was like just really terrifying and so sad, when because she's like, I've made my peace with God, and he tries to save her, and
No, it's rough.
it's
Yeah.
she dies anyway, and I don't know, all that stuff. There was a lot of good stuff, as far as, like, things that make you they're thought provoking, that make you have, feels, just, but
Yeah.
not, I don't know, something about the last part. I just feel like they could have done with another few, I guess, because it's only filmed like in what was it, 7 weeks, so maybe
Hmm.
they could have done with some more time to just kind of massage that whole ending.
Yeah. Yeah. Possibly. Wow. I feel like to some extent we are doing our final thoughts. So why don't we do them? The order that we did it was Tony, Julia, Drew, and I'll go. So, Tony, you want to wrap back around again and let us know your thoughts?
Yeah, I was really glad we did this. You know, I think it's good to capture, you know, Corman having multiple roles
Oh
in
yeah.
the process. In that it really is nice to tie it back into our retrospective. I think it's a movie that has a lot of really fascinating ideas. I don't think it quite gels, but I mean, you see like there's great performances throughout. There's a great cast. You know, I like the flavor of this, and nothing I've said about the flavor is definitely a knock. It just has that. There's a vibe.
Yeah.
And when you see it, I think you'd be hard pressed to capture. I would love to see somebody like capture it. Although, you know, I think maybe Suitable Flesh, I think, does a pretty good job of it, of
Oh yeah.
capturing a similar era, which is its intention. Yeah, I like it. I'm glad we've done it. It does, you know, I would like to see, you know, how an epilogue or something. Like, where
Yeah.
does this go? But maybe again, maybe a lot of the best films leave you going, huh, that is a
Right.
cool idea. Where do we take this?
Yeah.
And kind of springboard you onto you know, your own ideas. So
Mhm.
I really dig it, even if it's maybe not, you know, my favorite adaptation, but you know, it's at least it's memorable. That's what's cool.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Julia. What about you?
Well, I mean, I've said most of my thoughts. I really love Raul Julia's performance. I think he's great. I didn't realize I can't believe it's been 30 years already since he died. He died when we went the year we got married,
Mm,
in 1994. But John Hurt also, passed more recently. But they're both, really good performances. Bridget Fonda, she doesn't have a lot to do, but she's adorable and
yeah.
fun. So yeah, performances were good, and like we've been saying, that there's a lot of creativity and some innovative ideas, interesting sets, interesting. I never, like I say, I didn't ever get distracted. Unlike a lot of the 60s stuff we watch, where it's like it's supposed to be, the Elizabethan or whatever period, and then they just look like they've got beehives or whatever.
Yeah.
This I don't feel like it didn't feel very 80s, 90s-ish to me. So I did enjoy that. And so, yeah, I think definitely had a lot of good bits, and I was happy to have watched it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Drew, what about you?
You know, it's an uneven film, as we discussed, but I do think it is one of the more interesting and notable adaptations of Frankenstein. I also
Hmm.
think it is a movie that shows off Corman's chops as a director, probably more, because like this is a movie that has a lot of scope to it, and
Agreed.
and it's also a movie that shows like it's got smaller moments that really show when you get two good actors together and just let them bounce off each other. Like every scene with Raul Julia and John Hurt, they just crack with each other so well. And so I think it's a movie that deserves some reappraisal, like, because I think, I've talked to a lot of people about this movie, and they're like, oh, the best thing about that movie was the poster art, and the poster, I mean, admittedly is pretty
Poster is
amazing,
good,
but I think it's a better movie than its reputation warrants. And often movies do get some sort of reappraisal after some time has passed, and I think with Corman's passing earlier this year, maybe it's a time to take another look at this and say, you know what, this is a good bookend to his Gothic movies from the earlier period. Like this is it has some of the pieces of stuff like the undead, and it has some stuff like from the Poe films in it, while also being very much its own thing. And I just I would rather watch an interesting uneven film than a movie that's bland but consistent the whole way through. Like this movie may not be perfect, but it's worth the time spent watching it because it's got enough stuff in it that's good.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. That was great. I have nothing to add. I think that you guys have said it beautifully, other than thank you for giving us a chance to reappraise this, because I'm so glad. I mean, it was really neat to re-explore this, and it also tells me that I should be spending some more time with what amounts to kind of forgotten genre films of this era of the 90s. So very cool. All right, now let's get our endorsements. I would love to hear what you guys have to recommend. So Tony, we come back around to you. What do you got?
Yeah, I've been mainly concentrating on, releasing this past week. We released our latest single, Deserts of Mars, but I did get in the Game of Clones Bruceploitation collection from Severin, and that's pretty great.
Oh, that sounds cool.
It also has a pretty nice print of The Dragon Lives Again, which we've talked about. I don't know if we reviewed, but Dracula. I mean, it's got Dracula, James Bond, Popeye,
Emmanuel,
The Exorcist, The Man with No Name. But interestingly enough, it's
we did an episode on it. We did a lean back episode during
That's
COVID.
That's right. Yeah. The print is the one from AGFA, which I've actually seen in the theater, which is kind of cool. Evidently the print the original print, I do wish I could see one that's but the original print that they tried to get was just destroyed, like Vinegar Syndrome, terrible, sadly. But the Severin box set, like, not only is it have the really great Game of Clones documentary, but it's 7 discs of Bruceploitation, which is great. Also, last night I watched The Time Bandits in 4K. They were having Criterion was having a sale, so I picked that up, and that's always a great rewatch. So anytime I can, I've been slowly replacing things with 4K when I can. So that's been my big things. But yeah, and trying to catch up on a lot of things. There's a lot of great horror movies out there. Longlegs, Oddity. I still need to watch the Quiet Place movie that Drew mentioned. It was cool. So there's a lot to catch up on that I've been kind of missing out. But yeah, those are my big ones lately.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Julia, what's up?
Not much. What's up with you? I don't have anything to endorse this week. I feel like I still like the things I liked last week. I'm excited to go watch. Well, I'm gonna endorse Kamala Harris for president. That's what I'm gonna endorse. That's what I'm endorsing. But other than that, no, I'm excited to go see Wolverine and Deadpool or whatever order it's in the
Yes.
in the theater.
How did Deadpool get top billing?
Yeah, it's his
that
movie. He added Wolverine. But I think it should be Wolverine and Deadpool. But no, I'm psyched. We're gonna go see a fan showing on a screening at 3 on Thursday. So hopefully that means there will be swag or whatever.
Sweet.
So
That's
yay.
really great. Cool. Drew, what about you?
Well, I have started my crowdfund for Halloween Man Entropy. We are actually within the first 24 hours, almost halfway funded, which
Oh, that's
is
fantastic.
amazing. Thank you to everyone who has backed so far. But we still have, quite a bit of time and quite a bit of perks for everyone to check out. If you want to support some independent comics, please check it out. I have been posting the links in our Facebook group. You can also find it on Indiegogo if you just search Halloween Man Entropy on there. So please, back and get cool perks. And that's all I got this week.
Love it. I will just throw in. I went to see Longlegs, and this is the weirdest Nicolas Cage performance I have ever seen. Like, really, he disappears into this role. I mean, the way that Colin Farrell disappeared into the Penguin, this guy, like Nicolas Cage, just disappears into Longlegs. It's amazing. Tony, by the way, I was able to identify this sci-fi slash giallo picture from Italy from the 1980s that you pointed out to me, and it is Obsession: A Taste for Fear. And y'all, you need to look this movie up. It is a slasher slash 1980s futuristic photographers and models hanging out in studios and dancing, but also it's got cool concept cars. Like, you're not going to believe it until you see it. You must see Obsession: A Taste for Fear. So, all right, everybody,
It's
be
truly,
kind to one another.
It's truly like, it's Looker meets Runaway meets Body Double.
Yes.
Meets what's the it's the Rutger Hauer movie where it's raining all the time.
Oh, that was called Split Second.
Yeah, like it's this crazy.
There's something wrong with me, Tony. There's seriously something wrong with me. Why would I know that? Yes, that was
it was on the tip of my tongue, and I knew to ask, but like, yes, that it is like if you cook down the 80s erotic thriller sci-fi into like a, if you just cook it down to pure syrup.
Yeah.
That's what Obsession is. And it's gloriously that. I mean, it's, for better or worse, right? Like there's things in it that you're like, oh, okay, I don't know where there.
And it's free on YouTube. Free on YouTube. Obsession: A Taste for Fear. Didn't even expect to be endorsing this, but holy mackerel, you must see this film. So
yeah, it's
blue,
a blue lighting neon.
Yeah, baby.
It's everything that I mentioned, and for better and worse, warts and all, I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
But boy, is it that.
It is indeed that. It is all of that. All right. Adios, everyone. Be kind to one another. Bye.